Alrighty, so
You died.
one of the things that we're struggling with this task is that 90% of our writing that we've done in the schooling or in a summative context is in the subjects of English or history or geography. Now, the way that we write in those subjects tends to be very different to the way that we write in science, and a lot of us are struggling to make that change. So writing in science, it really changes the way that we're trying to write and the style of language that we use. So if you're trying to convince your parents of something or your siblings of something, how do you usually do it? Persuasively. You play with emotional language. You say things like horrifically or
lots of describing.
Devastating. Beth sometimes makes PowerPoints.
I do like PowerPoints.
Very few of you probably approach those scenarios with logical, reputable, scientific information, factual information. You often approach those with emotive language. You're trying to play on their heartstrings to make them do something for you. That is persuasive writing. That's not the realm of science. In the realm of science, we are trying to persuade people, but we are not doing it with persuasive language. So if I wanted to convince someone of the dangers of driving or the dangers of texting and driving, I could describe a horrific incident that has ripped a family apart and the emotional toil and the unfairness on the family and how much of an impact that makes on the community. That is not what I'd put in a scientific essay. In a scientific essay, I would simply provide the statistics. I'd give you statistics about how much more likely you are to have a crash when you are texting. And that's how I would sell my argument. Both persuasive, but the way in which I persuade is very different. And you need to get your head around that idea in science. When you're writing a scientific essay, your language must be formal. You must be coming across in a way that is not persuasive. Now that's difficult because you are trying to persuade the person reading your essay of the safety of nuclear power or the not safety of nuclear power. Are we clear on that?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm seeing things like the devastating impact or the horrific impact. Things like that I shouldn't be seeing. Now you can say the impact of these decisions could be catastrophic or could be devastating. That is fine. You're not using it as an adjective to describe a term. Does that make a bit of sense? Yep.
It's significant.
Significance fine. Significance fine. You're saying that, like, if you're describing a nuclear meltdown or a nuclear bomb, like they're a significant event, something that you can't just underplay on an event will occur. You have to describe that it is of large magnitude and it is a big problem, but you don't want to be leading people in other elements. So you don't want to be leading people before the word, before you're describing a word there, if that makes a bit of sense. Yeah. Sweet. I know it was a bit vague, that description, but I think you sort of get it. You want to be concise. Now, this is something that a lot of us are struggling with as well. It's not about showing me how much you know about nuclear power. It is about supporting your claim. So you do not need to give me 500 words on how nuclear fission works if your thing is about safety. If you're talking about safety, the only thing I really care about in the creation of nuclear power is meltdown, waste, and the likelihood of bombs. Maybe I'd care about the carbon emissions. Maybe I'd care about the contrast versus coal, but I don't need to know the centrifuge process. I don't need to know that they're splitting 235 to 2. They're trying to get 2,3 out to 235. What proportion, how efficient it is. Do I need all that when it comes to safety?
No.
The efficiency means nothing. To be really, really concise. This isn't about showing me how much you know about nuclear power. That's great. That will come up in the exam. I'm glad that you know the stuff and it will help you. But always think back, what am I trying to prove? What's the purpose of this essay? So I've talked about factual and scientifically reputable information before. Please, please, please ensure that your information is coming from reputable sites. If you're taking your information from a site called End Coal, for example, chances are, if they're quoting the deaths that have been saved in the millions, chances are that they're politically they're motivated by something. Their information is motivated by something. Now, if you want to use that and you think it's reliable, that is fine. You need to get that information validated from another source. And if you can't get it validated from another source, chances are the information is probably not very reputable. Reputable sources are things like government agencies, universities. There's a whole list of those articles that you can get on the Google Classroom that I provided for you. If it has been peer reviewed, it is far more likely to be reliable than if it's off some website that popped up second on your Google search. Be a little bit aware with your government agencies. Some of them might be politically motivated, but again, if you're concerned about reliability, just check for another source that supports it. Preferably of a reputable variety. Formal language is the last thing. Avoid abbreviations and try and be really, really formal. This is something I struggle with because when I read and when I write as I talk. And there is nothing wrong with saying this isn't the best method when you're saying it. When you're writing it in a scientific essay, you shouldn't be using abbreviations. You should be using is not. You should be putting capital letters on uranium.
That'll boost up English.
Just things like that. You need to be really formal. Don't say things like it's about 50-50. That's not formal language. That's very vague. You need to be precise and you need to be formal. Clear with that? Any questions?